Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I recap the NBA games from the night. We don't have a lot of time for intros. Game 2 of the Western Conference Finals just wrapped up, and it was incredible. Like, Game 1 was good, this one was even better, and you might not have expected that for the first half, even first, 2.5 quarters of this game, because for a while, Minnesota was firmly in the lead. They dropped a heartbreaking Game 1 for their fans, they lost at home, and it seemed like they came out with a new revitalized energy. Apparently they had a really tough film session that the coaches really dug into them after Game 1, and Game 2 they came out with more fire. You know, Cat and Ant weren't playing phenomenally, but they were doing enough to go ahead and lift them up. They were getting good play from role players like Naz Reid and Mike Conley. Rudy Gobert is playing well defensively, and they built out an 18-point lead in the first half. They went into halftime up by around 12. They extended the lead beyond 15 in the third quarter. It seemed like that this may be a big double-digit bounce-back win for the Wolves, but instead, the Mavericks had other plans because they've been, I believe, the best second half team in the playoffs so far. They fought all the way back to not only bring it to less than 5 points going into the fourth quarter, but they took the lead in the fourth quarter, went back and forth with the Wolves. Wolves tried to extend it a little bit, but the Mavericks refused to go away. They just have this unbelievable ability to hang around in games, to create offense out of thin air like they've done all season, but specifically throughout these playoffs. And then at the end of the game, as I'm sure you all know at this point, Luka Doncic decided to have another historic playoff moment. He's already got quite a few under his belt at the age of 25, and this one was the biggest of them all. It's on the Western Conference stage with a chance to go up 2-0 against Minnesota, going back to your home court. You haven't even played a home game quite yet, and Luka, with the team down 2, decides, we're not going for a 2. I'm going to go ahead and take this game over. He gets the switch on Rudy Gobert, the matchup that he said after the game he wanted. He wanted to go at the depoy. He goes ahead, hits him with a couple of moves, steps back, drops the 3 right over him, starts yelling at him, "You can't effing guard me," because Luka is insane. And then they go ahead and get the stop on the other end on Anthony Edwards, who kicks out to Naz Reid, misses the 3. The Dallas Mavericks win, go up 2-0 in the series. Again, they haven't even played a home game yet. They're in the driver's seat firmly to make their first NBA final since 2011. And it took a little bit from everybody. DJJ and PJ, not their best offensive games, but both contributed a lot defensively. Gafford and Derek Lively are just incredible lob threats for this team. Missed 2 shots combined. Gafford blocked 5 shots. He had 16 points. Lively had 14. The Mavericks generate so much offense with those vertical threats. Kyrie Irving had 20 points, 4 rebounds, and 6 assists. You got some good moments from like Jaden Hardy and Josh Green, but of course, Luka Doncic, as usual, was the guy to go ahead and put them over the finish line and was their best player. Finished with 32 points, 10 rebounds, 13 assists, shot 5-11 from 3, including the big one to go ahead and close this game out. He continues to improve on his legacy. Luka Doncic already has accomplished so much more than a ton of legends this early in his career. He's got more All-NBA first-team appearances than a lot of guys that you think of as all-time greats this early on. The stats supported as one of the best playoff players we've ever seen. Like, he had maybe one of his worst playoff series ever against Oklahoma City, and the numbers were still just unbelievable. And here, he's going up against the statistically best defense in the league and one of the best defenses we've seen in a while, and it just doesn't matter. He still finds ways to make it happen. Specifically with that Rudy Gobert moment, I've seen most people clown Rudy Gobert for getting cooked like that against Lucas, saying, "Oh, whose depoy is this?" The thing is, I feel like Rudy Gobert played fine defense. Like, if you watch Luka Doncic, he always tries to go that step back 3, especially in those clutch moments. That is the play that they run, but Luka really likes to go left on those step backs. That's the way he always goes on his game winners. Whenever he shoots that shot, they did everything they could, Jay McDaniels and Rudy Gobert, to try and force him right. And guess what? Luka went right, and it didn't matter. He still drilled the 3 over the outstretched arms of a 7-footer. I do think the Mavericks should have done more to try and fight over that screen, maybe just send double pressure at Luka and force the ball out of his hands. Even if somebody else makes a play, at least it's not in the hands of one of the best players in the world in Luka. They didn't do that, but I didn't think it was because Rudy Gobert got cooked that Luka made it happen. I think Luka made it happen because he's one of the greatest offensive players we've ever seen, and is going to go down as one of the best players of this era. Like, it's not just Rudy Gobert he cooked out there, it's Jay McDaniels, it's Anthony Edwards, all these incredible defenders. None of it really matters because Luka is just that good. He is a game breaker. We've really hardly ever, outside of a select few all-time greats seen a player at this age dominate the game the way that Luka Doncic has, and maybe that's going to result in him getting a finals win this season. Maybe this is just the beginning of his path to being one of the top 10 players in NBA history. We don't really know because his legacy is just beginning. He turned 25 in February, and he's already got a number of these signature playoff moments, these all-time level performances, battled with some of the best of this era, and he's out here doing it again against a Timberwolves team that is trying to do everything to contain him. It's just that nothing is really ever enough with a guy of this talent. And of course, it's not just the scoring, it's the playmaking, throwing some unbelievable passes, his ability to get the defense to commit and wait until the exact right moment, the last possible second, to throw the lob up or to kick out to somebody. He just knows the game so incredibly well. He's taken strides on that defensive end. Of course, a good rebounder with all the size at the point guard position. Luka is a talent unlike almost any we've ever seen before. And it's great to be able to watch the rise of a guy that is this good because, watching some of the legends of now, like LeBron and Kevin Durant and all these guys, I was, 3 years old when LeBron entered the league. When KD entered the league, I was younger than 10. So now it's crazy to see a guy that's, just a little bit older than me start to begin his rise and ascension towards an all-time great status. Luka is very well on that path. And if the Mavericks go on to win this series and maybe even win the finals, even if they lose, but Luka's still as ridiculous as he is now, there's going to be a lot of talks about him being the best player in the world. I'm already seeing some pop up on my Twitter timeline. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of them in the comments here. And if you're pushing that, I don't blame you because what Luka has done has been unbelievably special. His argument has only strengthened throughout this season. He was dominant in the regular season, finished top 3 in MVP voting. He's going to win MVP before too long. He's got, again, 5 All-NBA first teams at 25 years old. It's crazy he's only 25. He hasn't even hit the age yet where most players hit their prime. Like, think about this version of Luka, and this may be only the scratching the surface of what we may eventually see from Luka Doncic when he's like 27, 28, when he gets more experience, when he gets finals experience. Luka is only going to continue to wreck the league for the rest of his career. It's been a lot of fun to watch. So shout out to Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks for taking the first 2 games. I picked the Timberwolves to win this series in 6, so theoretically that is still possible, but the way Dallas is playing, they're not going to lose 4 games in a row. I would be shocked at least if they did. It's just very clear that while the teams are pretty split and you could go either way, Luka Doncic is so clearly the best player in this series, and that up to this point has been one of the biggest differences, especially when you compare it to what's happening with the Minnesota Stars on the other side, because to me that's the big reason why Minnesota is down 0-2. If you got even decent games from Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns in these first 2 matchups, you may be up 2-0 or at the very least tied. Instead, the 2 of them were really bad in both games so far. Karl-Anthony Towns only played 25 minutes. He kind of got played off the court in favor of Naz Reid, who was really good in this game, better than Cat was, but you're paying him like, what, 40, eventually $60 million on this contract to be the second guy for this team, and he wasn't even able to stay out there on the court. 4-16 shooting, 1 of 5 from 3 for just 15 points. Again, only playing 25 minutes as the guy who's supposed to be your second option, that's really bad. You can't afford that if you're the Timberwolves. That was one of the concerns coming into the playoffs is how is Cat going to perform because he's never been a great playoff player. We're seeing that show up here now. And it's not just Cat struggling. The Timberwolves are also facing a really good Mavericks defense. But if Minnesota wants any chance of coming back in this series or at least making it interesting, Cat has to be so much better. And then there's Anthony Edwards, who is getting a lot of very lofty comparisons throughout the playoffs. People calling him the next Jordan, next Kobe. Has not been in Western Conference Finals to remember so far for him. And he's really young. Like, it's to be expected that he might struggle in his first ever moment on this massive stage. It's happened a billion times with a bunch of stars. And I feel like the media kind of set him up for failure with these extremely lofty comparisons because through his first 2 Western Conference Finals games and really even going back to Game 7 against Denver, it's been a rough go for Anthony Edwards. In this one, 5 of 17 shooting, 2 of 7 from 3, 21 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 turnovers, one of which was really bad down the stretch of this game. The Timberwolves actually had the ball and they're winning. They got to stop against Luka. All they had to do was score one more time, and this game was probably out of reach, or it was very comfortably towards the Timberwolves' favor. But instead, Anthony Edwards couldn't really isolate on Derek Lively, didn't get anywhere, and then just ends up throwing a really bad pass out of bounds, missing Naz Reid completely to give the Mavericks back the ball, which of course led to the Luka Doncic shot. And then on the final possession, some people are mad that Ant didn't force it a bit more and pass it off to Naz Reid. I think that's fine. I mean, Naz had a good look, and he was on fire in this game. He was the most consistent scorer for the Wolves all night, has been really this entire series so far. I don't blame him at all for passing off that shot. If Naz hits it, people are talking about Ant making the right read and, making the good pass. it just didn't work out in their favor. Those two guys have to be better. When you take a look at how Luka and Kyrie have played through these first two games and how Kat and Anthony Edwards have played, that's pretty much the story of this series so far, because on both sides, some role players have been playing well, some have struggled, but the two stars in Luka and Kyrie have stepped up, while the two stars for the Minnesota Timberwolves with Ant and Kat have shrunk in the moment so far. One final thing I want to note is an officiating moment at the end of this game that I didn't love. There was about 47 seconds left. Jay McDaniels had the basketball, the Wolves were up 2, and he ends up getting it stripped out of bounds, but it looks like Kyrie hit it out, so it's Minnesota's ball, but the Mavericks go ahead and challenge it, and it turns out that no, it did go off Jay McDaniels' hands, but the reason it did is because Kyrie Irving slapped his entire arm, which you would think when they go ahead and challenge it, and the goal of a challenge and a review is to get the call right, they'd be able to be like, oh, that was a foul. But no, the rule is you can only overturn the call that you made. So they said there was no foul, so the only thing they could do is decide who the ball was off of. It was very clearly off of Jaden McDaniels, so the Mavericks ended up getting the ball back. It didn't matter because you had the Mavericks miss, and then the Wolves got it back, which led to the Ant turnover. So it's not like they scored off of that play, but it took away possession from Minnesota where they could have at least extended that lead. So I just don't love that. And this is something we've known for a while. It's always been the case, but here on this really big stage, it amplifies how big of an issue that is. You shouldn't be able to take advantage of a bad call with your challenge when the goal of the challenge in the replay should be to get the call right in the first place entirely, not just changing how it was ruled on the floor. But yeah, with all that being said, those are my takeaways from Game 2 of the Western Conference Finals. Shout out to the Mavericks, definitely in the driver's seat here. We'll see if Minnesota can bounce back, but for the moment, leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. And comment down below, who do you have winning this series? And where do you think Luka Doncic could end up all time? Do you think this is the beginning of a top 10 player all time, even top 5? Maybe a little bit lower, like 15 or 20. I will say, he's probably already a Hall of Famer at this point when you take into account his NBA accolades, as well as what he's done overseas, what he did before coming to the NBA. Just a crazy resume for Luka Doncic already at 25 years old. But yeah, appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.